r/relationships. You don't need to tell me says. My 25 male, GF 24 female, thinks my relationship with my friend group is gross and is reconsidering our relationship. How can I save this? So leaving this anonymous for many reasons. I have a girlfriend of 4 months well called Sydney. So far, so good. We click well, and we have a good handle of our lives at this point. She's a good communicator too, so really I have nothing to complain about. Sydney came out with me last weekend because we were celebrating one of my friend's birthdays and she really hasn't met anyone yet, schedules haven't lined up, and so we finally got around to it. My friend group is roughly 16 people as of looking at my group chat, with a mix of guys and girls. I'm very good friends with all the girls in my group and they were excited to meet Sydney. We got there and my friends are very touchy. Most of the girls greet me with hugs and in general are affectionate people. By the end of the night, we got to my truck and we get in, and she asks, so which one of those girls do you have a past with? And so far we agreed to keep each other's sexual past out of our relationship, so it caught me off guard. I replied by saying there are 3 of them, but it had been a while. At this moment, I realized I ed up. She asked me again if I had sex with 3 of those girls, in which I said yes. She said that's actually gross and that's something that she should been told regardless of our agreement. I said I'm sorry, I thought we agreed to keep our past out of it. She said no, that's actually insanely disgusting, and the fact you keep them around makes me wanna gag. I told her if she wanted to talk about it, and she said no. She said she wanted to go home and think about tonight. I asked her if she wanted to break up, and she said honestly, I don't know. I want time to think, so I'm giving her space right now. However, I don't want to lose her. She is definitely the best woman I've dated, and I don't want it to end because of decisions past me made. I'd appreciate advice, tips, or ideas on how to amend this. I'm feeling like I ed up right now, and I'm a little nervous. Thanks in advance. Too long, didn't read. GF met my friend group, asked me if I had a past with any of the women, and I said 3. She finds it gross and is reconsidering. Chicanksadilla says, good advice. There is a lot of terrible advice in this thread, making assumptions about Op and these other girls. Ridmass Republic says, I think it's a red flag to be so judgmental about exes or past hookups. This woman's jealousy is not going to stop here. Camelab says, I think the best thing to do is gently ask questions that help you understand what makes her uncomfortable. Is it the fact that your friends still see these women? That they hug you? What's the issue? Then you can decide if it's a boundary you should set up and can maintain. I don't think it's fair for her to ask you to curb your friendship with them, and I think it's odd that she's cutting you and your friendships down with her language, but I assume she's lashing out because she feels insecure. It would be better if she could focus on what makes her feel that way instead of saying mean things about you/your relationships. But that's hard to do early on. If she's uncomfortable with certain behaviors, like them hanging on your arm or something, and you can get to the root of those things, I think it's reasonable to adjust behaviors without impacting the core of your friendships. The fact that all of these women behave this way, and that they included her and were welcoming, makes it sound not territorial, though it might feel inappropriate to her, which is fair. Everyone has different boundaries and expectations for relationships. If she breaks up over it without trying to solve for the issue, or giving you a chance to work with her on it, then unfortunately that's not a great sign of partnership potential, in my opinion. This definitely won't be the hardest challenge you face if you're together long term, especially given your willingness to adjust the situation. Good luck. Nut Banana Computer says, I know she's the best girl you've dated so far, but you've painted a pretty nasty portrait of her. To me that just sounds like you've had really rotten luck with women. It is hard to imagine that your next girlfriend won't be a huge improvement, and I'd recommend getting to that sooner rather than later. Ninjago 69 says, it's a 16-person group setting. You're fine. Your GF is allowed to feel that way. It's not like you hang out with any of those three on their own. When you have a tight group like that, people sleep with each other. Showing you a red flag for your friend group. When you give in, you only delaying the inevitable. Your friend group going to shun you because they aren't going to uninvite those three friends to group settings, and your GF won't let you go at all. Big Way 9139 says, you don't have anything to apologize about, and I think her reaction is about her own discomfort, not your behavior. It's perfectly okay to have casual sexual relationships with friends, and it's perfectly okay to continue to be friends with those people. Please don't feel ashamed or like you've made a mistake. Honestly, if she's reacting like this, maybe she should have asked for more information about previous partners. She's entitled to her feelings, but she shouldn't make you feel wrong or gross for your own sexual choices. However, I would suggest, as a compromise, to put some reasonable boundaries with women you have a past with. r/relationships. Dunaden 2358 says, my 31 male, friend 38 male, had a gruesome climbing accident that I was the only witness of, and I have PTSD flashbacks from it. How do I talk to him about it? Trigger warning. So 2 years ago I was climbing with a friend and he fell from 40 feet to rocks, ripping out all his protection that was supposed to catch him. I'll spare you the gory details, but it was probably the single most horrifying thing I've ever seen, and I've never seen a human being in so much pain before. He is alive, but no longer has use of his legs. We were still hanging out while and after he recovered, and have talked a bit about it, but there's a lot that I have a hard time talking about. I have this sort of survivor's guilt because I still have full function of my body, and I see how much it pains him to not engage with the outdoors like we used to. I brought this up, but he took it as me feeling guilty that I didn't catch him, which is true, but then he told me how guilty he feels that I had to watch him nearly die and see such a gruesome thing, take care of him and initiate rescue. After he told me this, I just couldn't tell him that I feel so guilty that I can still walk. It just felt wrong. This year I had a stint of many months where I would have flashbacks every day of the event. It was usually alone and it happened, but sometimes we would be hanging out, and then all of a sudden images and sounds of his face contorted in agony screaming at the sky for help would come into my mind when he was just sitting there normally right in front of me. It began to get really hard to see him because these flashbacks are really scary. I started to avoid him because it's really hard for me to go back there. I think he thinks we haven't been hanging out because he can't do the things he used to, but that's not the case. I'm just afraid. I want to tell him this is a reason, but he already feels so guilty about it and has so much on his plate that I can't bring myself to add to his pain. It's really eating me up because he's one of my best friends and I don't want to abandon him. I'm just going through a lot in my head. How do I approach this conversation? Too long. Didn't read. My friend was paralyzed waist down in a climbing accident and it's hard for me to see him because I have PTSD from witnessing it. Want to know how to talk about it with him. Tossaway 78701 says, there is a form of therapy called IMDA that works great on event-based trauma. Please look into it. You deserve to be flashback free. Lingenslask says, there are several methods for dealing with PTSD. If you still have symptoms, you should try to get help. As with all anxiety, avoiding or trying to control the trigger tends to make PTSD worse, not better. Do you know if he has symptoms? Talking about it could be helpful for both of you. Menstruosity says, you need trauma therapy for your PTSD, not just supportive talk therapy, but an evidence-based treatment like EMDR. It will help your brain reprocess the traumatic memories so that the severity and frequency of your flashbacks decreases. I urge you to seek treatment sooner than later, because delaying treatment can lead to secondary effects on your mental and physical health down the line. Regarding the relationship issue, you need to tell him, "I'm sorry I've been avoiding you. It's not your fault and it's not because of anything you've done. I'm dealing with some PTSD and sometimes the sights and sounds of that day come back to me. I haven't known how to deal with it, but I'm going to get treatment. I'm sorry I've been pulling away. I care about you, even though I feel like I don't know how to talk about these things." Touch Myosoma says, "Are you getting therapy? It would help with your mental state, PTSD, and other feelings. And they can probably help you figure out how to have this conversation. But my man, you need to talk about this to someone that isn't your friend first. Go find yourself a nice therapist." Specific6 says, "Totally valid feelings and reactions. If you can afford it, definitely urge you to get professional help. Maybe even a survivors group therapy might be an option. However, I think you also need to talk to your friend. Don't let this situation ruin the friendship. His life is forever changed, and he probably feels like it's a him issue as to why you don't want to hang out and not a trauma issue." Not for comment Inagu says, "When I was in the climbing club at college, one of us watched another of us die while climbing. It ate him up. He became odd, withdrawn. He wore his climbing helmet 24/7 to college while studying and such like. You, like him, have gone through a legitimate trauma yourself, and I urge you to see a therapist for yourself. Should have done years ago, really. And the therapist can help you work through how you relate to your friend." Iwangum says, "This advice might sound a little odd, but I hope I can provide a bit of perspective. I'm disabled, though not through an accident, through illness, and it obviously affects people around me who find it hard to see what I'm going through. I'm not proud of it, and it is a selfish impulse, but when people tell me that it's hard for them that I'm disabled, or it's hard for them to see me like this or similar, I know that their feelings are valid, and they feel how they feel, but there is an element of resentment that bubbles up in me, a kind of, well, if it's so hard to witness, imagine how hard it is to live it. That impulse is unfair on them, but it exists. I don't usually give into it, but in some weaker moments, when I felt like someone was blaming me for them feeling bad, I would say something to that effect. It never helped. What? That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.